So these are cut-proof gloves. So they're made from a Kevlar, and there's a steel or something going through them as well. You can cut, but you can't stab with them. And I always wear these underneath nitrile gloves. And there's two benefits to that. Keep your hands warm, keep the meat from getting overheated, especially when you're mixing burgers and things like that. I wear these under gloves as well. But you give yourself a nick, like you'll cut the glove. Nitriles are actually proof enough. I was hoping to cut a glove there, Jesse. Yeah.
That's pretty blunt. How often do you put the knife on the steel when you're actually working?
Oh, basically, per deer, I suppose I might do it maybe 5 or 6 times. I just have a habit of picking up the steel while I'm thinking about what I'm doing next, and just giving it a few rubs on the steel. And depending on what way the knife is going at the time, I use different steels. So this would be a very coarse steel. It's a very standard butcher steel. You can see the grooves in the steel itself. And this then would be my normal go-to steel. That's a Dicron steel. It'd be very common in the boning halls around the country. When I worked in the boning halls, this is the steel that I had. And then we have the chrome steel. So when you have a really good edge up and you just want to maintain it, the chrome steel, which it's as smooth as a mirror, and you'll hear the different sound in it. You know, there's no abrasion on that whatsoever, but what it does is just maintains a fine edge and gives you the best edge possible. And you don't need to do an awful lot of steeling. You'll see the chefs on the TV, and they'll be slapping a knife off a steel, and it makes, all they're actually doing is blunting a knife.
That's just for show, isn't it?
It's just for show, yeah. This crack, like, you know, and it does absolutely nothing for the knife. The edge on a knife is a very fine thing. So if you imagine the edge on a knife and what a steel does, so that's a dead straight edge on a knife, right? And as you cut with that, it starts to bend over to the side, just from hitting bone or whatever the case may be. And what the steel does then is it straightens that edge back up again. And when the knife becomes unusable is when it goes right, the edge actually goes right over. And you'd have to look under a microscope to see it, or a very high power magnification. But what you're doing is you're bringing your edge up straight again with the steel. You'll see me steeling today, and I'll be steeling, you know, towards my hand like this. I worked in the boning halls for many years, and that's the way we did it. But we had a steel glove from here to here, and if you missed the steel and it hit your hand, it didn't matter. So I've developed muscle memory that I don't do that. But the best and safest way to steel a knife is to put the steel on the table like that, and stand back from it and just watch the knife going down either side. And you can actually see the angle a lot better like this. And there's no great pressure needed. It's counterproductive to lean on that.
You're just going to bend it over more, aren't you?
Yeah. This is a 5-inch curved boning knife, and it's a flexible one. I like the flexible ones, especially on deer. You'll see there's good flex in that there. Whereas this one is a Victorinox as well, and it's a 5-inch curved boning knife, but there's no flex in that, so that's a rigid one. And what it does is it allows me to run along the bone. So when I have the knife in my hand and I'm sliding along the bone, I can press into that bone and get it nice and tight, and you get cleaner bones with the flexible knife. Or well, I do anyway. Other knives that I have are the big steak knife. So this is your big knife for cutting chops and steaks. So you get a good long straight stroke through your steak. They're a handy little knife. One of my other favourite little knives is it looks like a steak knife, so it's like a mini steak knife, but I use that for trimming. So when I'm shaping fat around, you know, the rump end or whatever of a roast, That's what I'll use for that, and also for just slicing and dicing, doing up stew meat or something. It's just a nice light little knife with plenty of length on it. And then we have a skinning knife here. So very handy, especially for skinning things like wild boar, where you have to do a lot of work to get the skin off. Not so much on deer. Yeah, handy little knife to have. And this is a little roe knife, and not sure who actually makes it even. Frost's. So there's a blunt tip in it, right? And I use this for cutting through skin. So I'll put this under the skin and I can open down along the skin with, like a zipper with it. I'll show you that later on the front legs of the deer when we're skinning them.
If you had to have just one to do everything with?
5-inch flexible. And if I had a sheet for that, that's what I'd use out in the field. You know, they're brilliant knife. It's the one knife that you can do everything with. So this is a deer that you've brought to me, Jay. A hill animal, I presume, is it?
Yeah.
Nice little calf. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the front legs. This thing is chest shot, so we're just cutting down below the leg there, and we're looking for this joint, right? It's a lower down joint than normal. There's another joint here, so we're going way down the leg here, and what that does is allows me to hang the animal by the front legs. So the way to find it is you run your hand up along the inside of the leg here until you feel a little rise there in the leg, right? And I'm just going to cut through there. So I tension the leg here. See the hoof here? I'm bending that back like that.
So that's not the joint that you remove your leg on doing your DSC2 or anything like that?
No, it's a lower down one.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, it's a straight cut down through it.
Yeah.
It's a real straight joint. Whereas the other one, you can see the ball and socket sort of rotating.
So the actual knee joint is still on the animal?
The knee joint is still there, yeah. So it's below the knee joint. You see it there, it's very flat. And then the knee joint is actually back up here.
Okay.
So what it does is it gives you a better anchor to hang the animal on.
And you prefer to skin them from the neck down?
Yeah, it's a method that I kind of worked on a number of years ago. I have this strange thing of lying in bed thinking about skinning deer. And
alone?
No, the wife is there. She don't know what she thinks I'm thinking of, but so I came to the conclusion that it was easier to skin a deer from the head down, because everything flows that way, you know. And skinning a deer, the last thing you want in a deer is hair, because it's really difficult to pick it off, and you don't want to be bringing deer into the house, venison into the house, and they're covered in hair. It kind of puts people off. So the cleanest way I've found to skin deer is to skin them from the front back. So I'm just using this little blunt tip knife. You can see the way it goes down there, and it hasn't cut the meat. That's why I use the blunt tip. So it opens it up nicely. If I was to use an ordinary knife on this, it would cut into the leg. So I'm just going down up to the shoulders there. So it's down the front of the leg I'm going. Then what I do is I get the one knife here, and I just need to release the skin from around the knee, because it's quite well attached there. You can see the attachments there. You just cut them like that. And you always cut from the inside out. You try never to cut hair, because once you cut the hair, it goes everywhere. So then put your hand underneath it here and just grip it with your fingers. Just push that forward like that. So once I've done that, then I want to give myself a place to put the gambrel. So I'm going to cut in between the bone, so press in tight to the bone there, push through, just make a slice like that. Come up a small bit more. And the same here. So you don't want to come up too far, because that tendon there is connected there, and that's going to hold the whole weight of the animal and me hanging out of it.
Okay.
So we just put the gambrel through there, like that, and through there. So I generally get them up to about that height, so I can start working on them. So to start working on them then, I'm never going to touch this meat as I'm skinning it, right? There's no punching down inside the carcass or anything like that. So I wrap my hand in around underneath the skin like that and just pull down. Around the other side, do the same. So under the skin and pull it away from the animal. Now generally when I shoot my own deer, I don't split the brisket until I'm actually have the animal skinned. It just makes for a cleaner brisket. You can see here now where the brisket is split there. You've got lots of hair there because the hair has been cut with it. Chest shot animals are going to be difficult to skin. You have to just work around them. So we get the hair, then we cut through the neck. So generally there's a joint in the neck there like that, and it's only a soft piece of tissue. Now you might take you a couple of tries to find it. When you get through, it'll just slice straight through it. So you've gone through the vertebrae, the joints in the vertebrae, and you get down so far and the knife will stop there, right? Then you turn the knife like this, because there's two little bones just sticking out past it there. So you turn the knife and then you can cut it right down like that. Get down to the skin and stop at the skin.
Is there only one vertebrae you can actually do that on? Or?
No, it's the whole way along the neck. So I could have gone anywhere in that.
Okay.
But they're very skinny necks on these little calves, so there's no point doing yourself hardship trying to get that little bit. So I get her up a bit. So when you get to there then, all you're doing, there's no great force needed. Where the meat starts to pull with it, where you have shot damage, just cut it and release it. And it's a good quick method of skinning a deer. A winch is very handy for this, because if you are just hanging this and you weren't able to get it up higher, you find yourself pulling lower and lower in the animal. It gets harder to pull. You get down to here, get your hand in under it again, just pull there. Again, I haven't touched any of the meat yet, which is important. You get down to the tail here, then you cut through the tail. So put a finger in around it and try and find a little joint. You can take a couple of goes to find it. There it is. And when you get in there, then put your two fingers in there, like that. This is dragging here. Just give it a nick. We get down to here then. So there's a joint here in the leg. So if you come up along, you feel a little rise in the leg there. You put the knife in there like that, and just run it around the back of the tendon like that, and it just breaks through. Same, I can see it there now. Just around like that. And that's your deer skinned. Just a nice cleanly skinned animal. So the fewer splits you can make in the skin, the less hair you're going to have in the animal. So if I had a split down along the legs here and here, you're going to get hair being cut, and that hair is going to end up on those hind quarters, and you're going to have to pick it off. And if you don't pick it off and it goes into the house, you're going to have a wife rejecting it. So the first thing I normally do is I knock off the front shoulders. Small bit of hair there, pick it as we go. So to take off the front shoulder, it's not connected by bone to anything. So you're just basically running the knife and seaming it out. You get down, you get the shoulder blade there, just let the shoulder blade knife run along that, and off it comes. Same with this side. I think most of this front end is going to go in the bin, but it looks of it from shot damage. That's the two front shoulders off. Take off the hind quarters. So I'll take off the belly first. Just open that up like that. There's two little fillets, or here. So that's the filet mignon here, or your fillet steak as you buy it in the restaurant. The head of the fillet starts at the top of the pelvis here. So you cut down till you meet the ball and socket there, and you do the same here. And then you run the knife underneath it that way, and just where the belly came along here, so make a little nick there, and you can take the head out of there. So that's the head opened up. Then to get the fillet out, what I like to do is I just run the knife along here and under, and then we try to trim it as we go. So just put your hand underneath it and run your finger under like that, and you leave all that gunk and membrane there, and then the whole lot should come out in one piece like that. So with the head of the fillet attached. That's the head of the fillet there that we tried to get. So it's nice and clean, that's ready to go in a pan basically at that. And then we just tidy up in here. Let's get my bin. So same on this side, just following the bone. Bones should guide you at all times. If you're not cutting it beside the bone, you're cutting it through meat, and you don't want to do that. So same as before, and trim as we go. I love these on the barbecue. I usually save up 5 or 6 of them and do them at a time. They're real finger food. It's almost like a kebab type affair on a barbecue. Right, when we get to here then, with the top of the pelvis here, the spine comes down and meets the pelvis, and where they meet there's a little joining, vertebrae joining there, and we're going to cut through that to separate the back legs from the spine. So top of the pelvis is here as well, you have to cut down through that, so cutting through there. So again, I'm following bone all the time, slice across through there, and like that. Drop it over the side of the table, and it all just falls apart for you. So you'll see I followed the bone there again, and there's no strip line left in that. So we're going to take off the strip lines now. So these are the strip lines, they're either side of the spine. I'll get the knife a rub of steel. You can count how many times I steeled you per deer. Right, so drive down along the bone and just run the knife. So I'm not going all the way down the first go, I'm only going down about an inch or so, and then I follow through along the bone. It just makes for a cleaner bone to give it 2 strokes. And then I work my way back up along the neck here. Trying to get the bones as clean as possible. When I was working in the meat factories, if your bones weren't clean, they were thrown back at you. It's a hard habit to get out of. So then we're going to take each of the bones here and cut in behind them. Roll it over. Go here again.
They're just the vertebrae?
Yeah, yeah. Roll it over to the side here then. And just follow the bones again. So bones are guiding you all the time. With a good sharp knife, there's no great force needed to do any of this. Sharp knives are safe knives. Because when you drive a knife into yourself, it's usually because you're putting great force on it. So I'm going around each one of these little bones trying to get the maximum amount of meat out. And that's your strip line, that's your rib end, that's your neck there. So you can see here we took the whole lot off in one go, the whole way along. That's exactly. So then we're going to take the pelvis out of this. So again we're seaming down between the legs, trying not to cut into the valuable meat. We get down to the ball and socket here, go in around it, and follow the bone out that way. That should all just start to fall apart then. Once you release the ball and socket, it should come together very easily for you. And if you're sliding along the bone, it comes out nice and clean. So back again here, Jay. So you notice I'm only using the very tip of this knife. Like there's only the top 3/4 of an inch the knife is really getting used. It's relatively clean. So there's a number of things we can do with the leg. One of the things I like to do since I got myself a bandsaw is to freeze them. So I take the entire leg and I put it in the freezer. I might put a bit of string around it there just to tighten that up a bit. And when it's frozen then I run it through the bandsaw. And I just take nice little stakes across through the bone as well. And stop at the shank, and then shorten up the shank and cook that separately. So they're beautiful steaks, aren't they?
Yeah, they're lovely. Proper cartoon looking steaks.
They are, aren't they? Very tender. If I tried to do that while it was fresh, basically all the joinings between the muscles would separate and I would just get pulled into the machine and make a proper mess. So now there's all the connective tissue is still in place, so they'll hold together well in the pan. So one of the simplest ways to do the leg is just to split it up and take the bone out of it, and then to bone, what we call bone and roll it. So I'm just going to follow the bone down. So on the inside of the leg now, this is where we're going down. So this is actually called the top side here. So I'm going down on the top side, go down till it starts to open out. You'll see the seaming out there. Then we get down to the leg here. So when you get it there, you can take this muscle off here. So this is the shank end of it, and we'll mince that. Take out the kneecap. So what we have here then is the haunch, and we can roll that together like that. I'll show you in a while. I'm going to put netting around that. So I have fine netting that I use and I put through a tube, and you end up with a nice little roast.
You could just tie it up?
You could tie it, yeah. If you can just tie it with string as well. There is another method which is called tunnel bowling, which is a little bit more difficult. I might just do it with this one. So to tunnel bone it, you have to take the leg off here. So you're cutting across here like this. And then what you do is you put the tip of the knife in and you work around the bone. From the other end then as well. A little bit messier than it's not as clean as doing it normally, but what it does is it keeps the muscle together that bit better. It makes it easier to tie.
Okay. So
you haven't split the top side as such, and you just fold that up and it'll tie a lot tidier and stay together better when it's tunnel boned. It's a very common way of doing hams when you're doing pork. Well, turn them into ham, and that's your little shank then that you've left over. So save up a couple of them and pop them in the slow cooker, leave them overnight, and you've a very nice lunch next day. So these are your strip lines. We have to make them trim them down a bit now. So you just tidying back along here. If you don't cut down to meet the skin there, you're going to rip the strip line the next job that I do. So you cut down, put your fingers underneath it, and just pull that all off. So that's your full strip line with the rib end up here. Generally I cut it in around there where it starts to narrow up a bit, and that'll go in for stir fry or something like that. And then we have to take the blue skin off. So if you leave the skin on, it's going to be very, very chewy. So you just put the knife underneath it and turn the knife up towards it. So you get through. So angle the knife up towards it and cut gently upwards. And you don't take the meat with it. It's the same going back then. So keep it stretched. The tighter you keep it, the easier it is to cut it. And that's it. So really no meat left on that. Might go just take the rest of it off now. So these are the bits that you'll see people leaving on the side of the plate, so there's no point in putting them on the plate in the first place. And you have a couple of options with that. You can use it in a Wellington style dish, as you would a fillet of beef. Because out of the calf like this is going to be super, super tender. What I generally do is I cut them in half, something this size, and I just roll that in the pan, and it's gorgeous. Bag them off.
So for you, I mean, obviously you enjoy the butchering, but it's, I mean, there's no great need for you to do this. But what are the pros of feeding your family with wild venison?
Well, you know what you're eating. That's the most important thing for me anyway. I worked in meat factories, and don't mean to speak bad of them, but I saw what happens in meat factories, and I've seen what happens in farming, and there is absolutely no better meat than venison, as far as I'm concerned anyway. It's the healthiest meat going. Ethically, I think it's the best meat to eat, because it lives in the most sustainable habitats. Like you got this deer from a mountain in Wicklow, and possibly the only other thing up there that would be as sustainable probably is a sheep, but even the sheep are going to be treated with antibiotics and whatever else. So you know that nobody has injected anything into this animal. You know that the land it's come from is good land. It's about traceability, I suppose, more so than anything else for me. Conservation is, important to me, and the more lands that are preserved for game and for the utilising of game, well, they'll be there for other wildlife as well. You don't get a lot of wildlife living in vast big green fields with no hedgerows or anything like that. You don't get deer living in them either. So if you want to have deer, you got to have nice natural habitats for them, and if you have nice natural habitat for the deer, you have nice natural habitat for all the other wildlife that we need. So this is the shank, or the shin that we took off earlier. So these long tendons coming out of here, you need to nick them off. And I need the heavy blue skin type of stuff. See it there, because they will be chewy as hell. So they go. And then that's stew meat. So just cut it into lengths and cut across the grain. So generally, front shoulders, the simplest thing to do with them is to use them for stewing or burger meat. That's what I use them for. My butchery is very much about, it's not about being fancy, it's about using things that can be used in the kitchen, things that you're likely to use in the kitchen. So we do a good few stews, we do a good few stir fries, and I like my burgers, so that's what I work towards. Another thing I do with bigger shoulders, supposing I shot a good lump of a hind with a good layer of fattener, I would take the entire shoulder out with the neck muscle and all, and I'd freeze it and run it through the bandsaw and get chops off it. So again, we're just following bones, that's all we're doing. And there's no particular order to it. I've worked in boning halls, and everybody does legs differently. You have 3 or 4 lads there boning legs, and they're all at it, coming at it from a different way.
It's just really to give it a go, isn't it? Like you said, there's no right and wrong way to do it.
No.
And of course, people are going to be messy and untidy, but the sense of satisfaction of doing this yourself and then eating it, is second to none, really.
Yeah. I love doing it. I left the meat industry a long time ago, and this is my hobby now. I kind of hated it when I was doing it, as you would, but I've built a little shed to do it in now, and it's my man shed. This is where I come for fun. And I get mates to call over, and we come out here for the evening, we make burgers and we have a bit of crack.
So all you're doing here is just taking every bit of the shoulder meat off the blade and the different leg.
Yeah. What I'm doing is probably looks complicated, but it's not. Once you know the anatomy of it, once you've done it a few times, you'll figure it out and you'll work your way around it. You may leave a bit of meat in the bone to start with, but you'll get better as you go on. And like, it's going for stew, so it's like you're going to chop it up anyway. It's not going to be a masterpiece. It's knowing what to cut off. That's definitely stew. So this is the shins again. I wouldn't generally put them in for burgers even, because they can be a bit chewy in a burger. You get that little bit of grizzle there in a burger, and it'll stick in your teeth. So
there's a higher grade of meat really that you'd use in a burger?
Yeah, I like to use, well, shoulder meat is great. Like, shoulder meat is stuffed with flavour, like, and it's still very tender meat. Like, I cut them into chops on some of the larger animals, and just cook them till they're medium rare. It's good tender meat, especially in these calves. That would make the best of burgers.
And as you say, it's important to recognise what you're going to use. If you're not going to have use for big whole hind leg roasts, there's no point in preparing them. If
you're a single guy, and you're living on your own, you're not going to cook it, a 3 kilo roast, on the Sunday. You'll be eating it for a week. So you can break this hind leg back down to steaks again, quite simply. You just take the muscles apart and just slicing across it and make steaks out of it. Yeah, cut what you use. So another way I like to do these is to do a bone-in shank. So we basically seam out the shank. It's kind of a delicate little operation. So you see we're seaming out the muscle here. We're just following seams all the time. For me, this is one of the nicest cuts of meat. Certainly the tastiest. So we're going to use the rest of the haunch as a bone-in roast, or a boneless roast. So that's our little shank. So I'm going to cut that across there with a saw and cut it across here, and we end up with this piece of meat here on the bone, and into a pot and slow cook it.
Great flavour.
Brilliant flavour. Yeah, absolutely amazing.
And that's a kind of cut that a lot of people mightn't even bother keeping, would there?
No. People chuck it into stew all the time. Or give it to the dog even sometimes. But if you've ever eaten lamb shanks, this is exactly the same thing really. Very, very tasty little piece of meat.
You mentioned lamb quite a lot. Is a deer closer comparable to lamb than it is to any other animal, do you think?
Certainly the calves. Calf meat is very underrated. Your game dealers don't give you a lot for calves, if anything at all. And I've spoke to chefs about it even, and there's a tendency to use cuts of meat that look good on a plate as opposed to going for the flavour. And the flavour of a calf is worlds apart from a stag or an old hind. It's the difference between mutton and lamb. And those shanks in this, when they're slow cooked, they're just melting them out, like, or any part of the calf really. So yeah, I compare the calves to lamb in many ways. It's just a little gland that we take out of there. So that's ready to bone, or to roll. Put the netting around it now. So this, what we're taking off here is the top side. So you can actually just use your finger to run in between it. They just basically pull apart. So that's your top side. We're going to cut that into little steaks. And again, it's just following the bone. As I say, it's not rocket science.
I fished with a lad over in Mayo. He's on, it's not rocket surgery.
Rocket surgery? I have to make a faux pas myself. So again, get your finger in, separate it out, and the muscles will basically just pull apart. So this is what they call the knuckle. So you'll know it because it's very round. It's got a lot of silver skin on it. Again, it's in 3 separate parts in here with silver skin in between. So it's quite a chewy bit of meat. So I don't normally cut that into steaks. And this then is called the silver side. It's called the silver side because of this silver along the side here. Just move that across. And then down here is the rump. So we separate the silver side from the rump, just cut across the top of it there. And there's a little gland there that needs to come out. On the side of the silver side is what's called the silver roll. And I generally leave that on for when I'm cutting the steaks. But we have to take the silver skin off, because again, silver skin is chewy.
What's the purpose of that silver skin?
It's actually a tendon.
Okay.
Or a ligament as such. So that's the power in the animal's leg. Probably his hamstring. So that's ready for cutting into steaks now. There's a lovely little cut of meat in this that I like to take out. So you can cook that as it is, as the rump, but I like to break it down into a couple of different muscle groups. So this is called, that's the rump, and when you trim it off, there's a little silvery bit here underneath, so you take that out. It kind of just pulls away. And that there is the tastiest little piece of meat in the whole deer. So just flash right out in the pan, and don't overcook it. It's gorgeous. This then is the rump cap, and this here is the rump tail. And these can be made into steaks as well. So generally you trim the fat off the back of this, or you can leave it on if there's a nice clean layer of fat like that.
And venison fat is okay to eat?
Oh yeah, it's lovely. Some people tell you it's very strong. I don't find it strong. You probably find it strong, Jason. But I like venison fat. I think it's lovely.
You just hear a lot of people say that you shouldn't use it in your burgers and stuff like that.
I use it in my burgers all the time. I freeze the flanks, and so when I have enough of flanks to make burgers, mix it in with some good lean shoulder, and I get nice fatty burgers. And a burger is nothing without fat, and the venison fat I find great. And maybe it's just the deer that we're using. You know, when they're good healthy animals with good layers of fat, the fat is good. But any animal that's, you know, going back in condition isn't going to taste as good as a fully healthy and fat animal. Like that animal there is in great condition. You can see the layer of fat there in it, Jason. You know, that's had a good life, and it hasn't suffered any malnutrition this year. That fat, if the animal was going back in condition, would be yellow and it wouldn't look so clean and white. So I wouldn't have any problem eating that fat.
So it's just knowing the condition of each individual animal and making your assessment.
Yeah, like, and if you see an animal with lots of fat around the kidneys and stuff like that, the leaf fat, you know, that's a great sign that you're going to have good quality meat. Like, I know that the deer around me here this year have been in exceptional condition, and I've been using all the fat off those animals. They're going to make for some great burgers this year. This is a knife that could take a finger off on you. It's just the length of it as you're stealing it. So I'm going to cut some little steaks out of this now. So I just square off the end. That can go in for stewing. And then I like to cut them fairly thick, like about an inch thick. You don't get many of it. I'm struggling to get that one. Yeah, no, that one's not going to work. But that can be done up for stir fry then. Just slice that nice and thin for stir fry. But they're nice little steaks there now. And this is the top side. So we do the same with the top side. So we'll square it off. For the likes of yourself, Jason, who wouldn't be into eating a whole roast, this is a good solution for your haunches.
Yeah. I found myself a lot the last few years actually just making a lot of mince, because you can then turn it into burgers or whatever you want at the time of cooking.
You can have it as spaghetti bolognese or,
exactly.
You know, there's so many things you can do with it, yeah. Lasagnas.
If you make burgers at this stage, all you've got is burgers. But at least when you just do sort of pound or pound and a half bags of mince, you can make whatever you want out of it.
Well, what I actually do is I make burgers, and then I can turn the burgers into meatballs. Or the wife turns the burgers into meatballs. But they work very well. I actually had some last night.
Burger balls.
Burger balls, yeah. I'll have to put that camera down at some stage, Jason, and start bagging.
So that's a whole haunch.
So that's 2 haunches there. This is the steaks off of 2 haunches. Now we still have these.
Is there something therapeutic for you about stealing the knife?
Yeah, I just love it. Well, there's nothing worse than trying to cut with a blunt knife. So I'm just going to separate out the muscle a little bit here. Spread it out. And then we're going to stick slices across it. So as long as you're cutting across that blue skin, it breaks it up. It doesn't feel so chewy. You always cut across the grain in it.
Okay. And it's perfectly safe to eat any venison cut rare as you want.
Right, yeah. Once it's cut meat, so the likes of this, which is the fillet, once you flash fry that on the outside, you're killing all the bacteria that has come in contact with that as we're butchering it, or you know, while it's out in the open. And what's inside of that then is clean meat. So you can eat that as rare as you like. So once you sear the outside of that, you can eat it blue if you want. Likes of this, you don't want to be eating that rare because I've just cut through that. So there could be E. coli, salmonella, whatever on any of the surfaces here. No, I hope not. I cleaned them. But so you're not going to eat that rare as such. Now if you had a very clean surface, you could chop it up and you could do steak tartare. And but even steak tartare, they put vinegars and things on them, just to be sure that you're going to remove any bacteria there. So whole mussels, yeah, you can eat rare. You know, your roasts you can eat rare. It's just where it might have come in contact with bacteria, you don't eat it.
Okay. So if you're doing this stir fry, you're better off just to make sure it's cooked all the way through.
Well, you will with a stir fry anyway. It's so thin that it's not like, you know, it's a very thin piece of meat. Like, you know, you can really see, if you hold it up to the light, you can see through it. You know, so like you can't cook that rare.
Yeah, yeah.
As soon as that hits the pan, it's cooked. So Jason, what you have here is your stewing meat, nicely chopped. Then we have our fillets here, so these are our little fillet steaks, or filet mignon. This is all going for mince. These are strip line steaks here, so with the blue skin off. These are the steaks we cut off the haunches, and these are little rump steaks. Over here is your stir fry. So that's the finely sliced stir fry meat. Again, that's off the knuckles. And these are the haunches that we're going to net and tie up now. And then over here we have our shanks. So we're just going to nip the bones off here, and we'll do them in the bandsaw.
Plenty of meat.
No shortage of it, yeah. So not bad for 3 little deer. Probably 700 to 800 grams is normally what I put in the bag. Just seems to work portion wise. Here's your little fillets. You have 6 of them for the barbecue. And you'll see guys buying trays and things for butcher suppliers, polystyrene trays. It's not something I'm into. I try to use as little plastics as possible. And they just take up space in the freezer anyway.
Yeah.
Generally, just what I do is I flatten them out after I've sealed them up, and just fit better in the freezer. And when you go to defrost them, they're that bit easier to defrost. This is what we use for netting the haunches. So this is our netting. Comes in a big roll. Just going to cut off what I need. And a knife. And I'll just thread it on. So this white thing is only so as I can get it onto the tube. Again, these tubes are available from butcher supplies, along with the netting. Take off your ring. Pull the netting over the mouth of it there, and then you simply feed the roast through.
you're going to cook a roast of venison, do you ever brown the venison first?
Yeah, you can, like, this will take the heat, so you can roll it on a frying pan first to get the Maillard effect. So then what I do is just to tidy them up. Tuck bits in that are sticking out. Put the knife in here. Grab a few threads. Pull it. So 3 or 4 threads is enough. So it's a much more it'll cook much more evenly this way. Nice round roast. Then you can put stuffing in them if you want. Because you have the legs split open anyway when you're taking the bone out. If you have any kind of stuffing that you want to place in it, just put it in there before you put the netting on.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to mince your meat. This is all the shoulders and the shins and bits and pieces. You said you wanted to take some mince home. I use this. It's a more of a commercial mincer. Picked it up on Dundee for 200 quid. I've been through quite a few mincers over the last few years, so I bought all the cheaper, more domestic versions, and I broke them quite quickly. So for me, I think it's better to splash out on something that's got a bit of power in it. So this is a 1 horsepower mincer, and it can take I think it's, I don't know how much it is actually. I have to check the side of it, but it's quite an amount of meat per hour. And you can put large cuts of meat through it. So like all of that will go in like that. Just pulls it into it. Makes it a lot easier to feed them in, so you don't have to dice it up so fine. That's nearly a full shoulder down to that in one go. So again, when I'm bagging these, I like to bag them so they will freeze flat, and just makes for easier packing and easier defrosting. So it's just a tape sealer. Seal the tape the top of the bag, and then just flatten it out in the bag.
I have to say a massive thanks to John for sharing his skills and showing us how to do this. If you've enjoyed this and would like to see more of these long form films that take you step by step, then please leave a comment below.